Hey guys, Metal Viking 82 here, back finally with my top 40 albums of 2023. I know I usually do this earlier in the new year, and got a little behind this time. Just trying to get the list finalized and what was going to make the list, and just so many things kept getting in my way. I'm going to try to do better next year, but I'm going to jump right into this. It's going to be the first 15 of the list, not in any kind of particular order. I don't rank things anymore. But I am going to start with the Indiana bands that made my list this year, starting off with Veilcast and their latest album, Precipice. Yeah, the latest one from this indie-based doom sludge outfit is the first album that they put out through Wise Blood Records, and is just full of headbangable grooves, thick bass, and I just love the subtle keys that are sprinkled throughout this album. Favorite track on here was definitely Dust and Bone. That is one of the main reasons that I kept coming back to this. I mean, besides the fact that the whole thing kicks ass throughout the entire year, and I listened to this quite a bit, especially at work. Definitely go check out the new Veilcast. Then we have Grave Ripper with Seasons Dreaming Death. Yeah, the debut album from these indie black thrash speed metalers, shows why they're one of the best in the current Indiana scene right now, in my opinion. It's just fast, aggressive. It's just evil at times, but it never foregoes any kind of headbangability or catchiness to it as well. They mix that in with the heaviness and the aggression really well, I think. Very D.D. Verney-ish style bass, just beastly drums from Jacob, top-notch guitar work that just seamlessly transitions between those thrashy and more black metal inspired riffs, with just absolutely scorching solos and Corey's powerful deathly shouts. This is just an absolutely banger of a debut album. Go check it out. And then we've got, of course, Flesher with their new one, Tales of Grotesque Demise. Yeah, these indie death metal bruisers, tore us a new one with their 2022 demo, and on this debut album, they have just continued the onslaught here. It's heavy, hooky, and just headbangable. I mean, this is just a great representation of how old school death metal should be done. And despite having reservations of them re-recording the demo tracks for this album, they did an absolutely killer job with them, I think. And while I may prefer the old versions, the new ones definitely whoop ass, as does this entire album. Go check it out. Next up, Alice Cooper with Road. I mean, Alice Cooper really needs no introduction, and this album here definitely has that old school sound to it, much far from the metallic sound of Alice Cooper when I first discovered him, when I heard the song "Feed My Frankenstein," and then of course "Poison," which is still my favorite Alice Cooper song of all time. But still, this is just full of great musicianship throughout this whole thing. I think Alice sounds as good as ever. Some of my favorite tracks on here, and funnily enough, they all are just like one right after the other. You have track number 4, Dead Don't Dance, with this kind of Corrosion of Conformity style riffs here and there. Track number 5, Go Away, has a nice really killer guitar solo in it. And then the follow-up track, White Line Frankenstein, has another killer guitar solo, and I honestly think that would be a really good song to play live. I think it would go over really well. This whole album is just a pure rocker. Go check it out. All right, get my notes all situated here. Next up, and hopefully I can pronounce this band name right, Eileen with We Shall Remain. Yeah, this Swedish symphonic metal band were new to me last year. I discovered them through my buddy Brian Eckerman, who you've heard me talk about on this channel quite a bit. And unlike a lot of the bands from this style, they sound quite different to me. This is not the usual symphonic metal that I am used to. This is just full of heavy guitars with nice head-bangable gallops and grooves, just killer drums, very cool symphonic orchestrations that never really outstay their welcome or are too over the top. Rather, they are used more to kind of accentuate and create atmosphere when they're needed. Beautiful, beautiful vocals mixed with some nice growls at times. They even have some gang shouts thrown in here as well. One of the things that stood out to me on here is track number 4, Promise of Apocalypse. I love that subtle kind of, I want to say it's like a violin maybe, that appears at about 236 into the song, and just, that somber tone when you mix it with her vocals, and that heavy chuggy riff is just absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Next up, a band that really needs no introduction here, the new Overkill, Scorched. I mean, with their 20th album, God, that's so hard to believe. These legends pretty much, are yet another band that came out in 2023 with a new album and showed the new blood how it is done. Dee Dee Verni's bass tone is on point. Blitz sounds as fantastic as ever. And let's be honest, by this point, it's Overkill. You know what to expect from this band, and you are getting it here in spades on this album. Killer album from these legends of the thrash metal scene. Another thrash band that really put out a killer album in my opinion, though I know some did not care for it at all. This is the new Sadist with The Shadow Inside. This is the band's first album in 17 years, and it's actually the first album to not feature Steve DiGiorgio on bass, but man, is it ever a ripper. I mean, you got fast, scything guitars on here with some killer solos, thick bass, easily heard throughout the whole album, pounding drums, and Darren Travis is absolutely scathing vocals on here. One thing that really stood out to me, though, is track number 9, New Beginnings. I loved the bass on this. Basically, it's just an instrumental track with that kind of little drum roll that they got going on. And then the guitars have this kind of slow-picked, almost, for lack of a better term, ethereal feel to the riffs that they're producing. And then at about 152, I just love that bass riff that comes in. It's kind of like the guitar stop and you just get this nice bass riff, and and then just everything just really seamlessly transitions into the closing track. Really good stuff. Next up, Warman with Here for None. Now, if you're not familiar with this is a solo project from former Children of Bodom, the former Children of Bodom keyboardist Jan Warman, and this is their first album in 9 years. And frankly, this is a perfect album for those who miss Children of Bodom. I mean, it's just full of excellent keyboard work, obviously. It's just a nice mix of power metal and melodic death metal with just solid musicianship, great vocals. I mean, it's just heavy and catchy throughout. Definitely go check this one out. All right. Next up, Marduk with Memento Mori. Yeah, this Swedish black metal horde delivered yet another slab of just icy tremolos, a bass that you can actually hear in the mix, which is unusual for black metal, sick drums, and of course Mortis's nasty sounding vocals that are just in top form on here. The closing track on this album, though, As We Are, stands out not only with its slower pace and booming drums and overall feel. It's honestly completely different from the blasting ass whooping of the previous 9 tracks on this album, though it does pick up the pace a little bit at about the 5:04 mark, but definitely an interesting way to close the album. But yeah, another solid album from these guys in my opinion. Next up, we have Mork with Dippet. And this is the 6th album from this Norwegian one-man black metal act, and yet another that you can actually hear the bass in the mix. I mean, that's so unusual for black metal, I'm telling you. But yeah, this thing has just got such great production. Everything is just well written and executed. It's bleak and melancholic at times, but it's also catchy as fuck. And it flows so well with all the songs ranging from anywhere from 4.5 to 7.5 minutes. But they're so well written and everything that you just do not notice how long these songs are. They just flow so nicely. Definitely an album worth checking out. This one here, such a bittersweet affair. The new Black Knife with Baby Eater Witch. Like I said, very bittersweet because this 3rd album is honestly their last album because they announced their split not long after it was going to be released. It's raw, in-your-face aggression, and it's just got this grimy, dirty atmosphere that was created to unsettle you and just give you nightmares with the evil incantations contained within this album. Favorite tracks on here, definitely Snakebite Succubus. Those falsetto screams get me every time. And of course, Evil Sex on Halloween. I mean, because who wouldn't want to have that, right? Next up, Immortal with War Against All. and this was an early entry into the year-end list for me for sure. This is just, old school Immortal vibes all over this thing, especially the album Pure Holocaust I got while listening to this. Just great production, great vocals, great musicianship throughout this entire thing. I mean, honestly, wasting no time, kicking you in the teeth, and just hardly lets up from the get-go. I mean, for example, the first 2 tracks just hit you hard and fast right off the bat, and then the third track does kind of go into a more, it's entitled War God. That one kind of goes into a little bit of a more mid-tempo pace, but then it finally picks up, in sections as well, gets a little bit faster. But yeah, solid offering from Demonaz here. Immortal is still kicking ass years later. Next up, Asagrom with Veil of Death Ruptured. This is very old school black metal sounding in terms of production, with just that right amount of rawness to it. Very old school sounding guitar tone. The drums kind of remind me of old Immortal, with just great blast beats throughout this whole thing. The bass is audible, strangely, but it's not too high up in the mix, and yet you got sick rasps for the vocals with some spoken words thrown in as well at times. And then this is just pure, excellent Dutch black metal, in my opinion. Definitely one of the best in the scene. One other thing I do want to add about this album, though, is track number 7, Opus Ad Eternum. This is an acoustic instrumental track on here, and I just loved the haunting atmosphere they created with that song. So damn good. All right. Next up, Whore of Bethlehem with Ritual of Homicide. On their first album in 6 years and their third album overall, these Texas heathens proved they haven't lost a step. Yeah, it's just fast, aggressive, and just absolutely evil sounding. The bass is right up front, thick and heavy. Great guitar work, mixing old school death metal with some, slower, heavier chugs and more black metal style riffing seamlessly. Great drums from Sam, and just, James's powerful and intelligible growls that are kind of reminiscent of Kyle Simons at times, from formerly of Malevolent Creation, now in Kill Division. And he actually mixes those with some really nasty sounding black metal screams as well. Absolutely love this album. I actually still listen to this quite a bit while I'm at work. And the last one for this part, Go Ahead and Die with Unhealthy Mechanisms. And yeah, this was a late in the year discovery for me, but man, does it ever whoop ass. It's thrashy, headbangable, and just absolutely heavy as balls. A lot of mid-paced grooves here, but they're also fast and thrashy at times. A good example of that is track number 6, MDA, Most Dangerous Animal, when it kicks into gear after a little opening sample at about 45 seconds into the song. I love the blast beats on this album. They're very old school death metal sounding. I love that twangy bass that they got on here, and I think Max's vocals are just absolutely killer on this release. Go check this out if you have not. So yeah, that is going to do it for this part. This is the first 15. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing. And until next time, stay brutal.